Debate 4-on-1, we are now live. Thank you so much for making time and for joining us. We are here every Monday and Wednesday from 9 p.m. till 10. And of course, what we come here to do is to have conversations on real issues that affect us with an aim of moving those conversations forward and of course, looking for homegrown solutions to them. My name as always is Eugene Anangwe. Today on the program, we're talking about the issue of press. And of course, our focus is on the issue of defamation and the arguments on whether if all press-related offenses were removed from the penal code, would that help in improving vibrancy of the media? That's the point of conversation that we're going to be having right here on the program. If you want to get in touch with us, like those who have already been talking to us, all you need to do is tweet us at Debate411, that's the handle, or you can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. The hashtag is Debate411. Let me bring on board our panelists on the program today. We have Mr. Benjamin, who's not new on the program, but quite lost for some time off the screens. But thank you so much for joining us. You're a lawyer. Thank you for joining us. Also, we have none other than Bosco, our second lawyer on the panel. And we also, it's important to tell them that we also have two Mugishas on the program. We have Ivan, the journalist, practicing journalist. Thank you for joining us, Ivan, on the program. And we also have Emmanuel Mugisha, who's the executive secretary of the media, the Rwanda Media Commission. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
From the regulatory point of view. Now, there's been, campaigns from different quarters, some made public, some not so public, about the calls by media practitioners for the removal of media-related offenses from the penal code, such as defamation, and say that if you were, guilty of defaming officials, so and so, then it should not be a punitive offense under the law. In other words, what they were calling for is this kind of punishments should be handled by civil courts and not under the penal code. And the argument has always been that with these offenses being under the penal code, then it makes journalists, most of them, to be self-censored, because they fear that if I was to do an investigative report on so-and-so, then this person is likely to say that I defamed him or her, and I would end up paying huge amounts of fines or being in prison. And so the argument has been that let's remove them from there so that we can have a more vibrant media that is able to investigate, poke holes here and there. And so I'll start with you, Mugisha, from your regulatory point of view, because the argument is that those offenses should be handled by media regulating bodies that are already existing or by civil courts. What is your thought on that?
Thank you, Eugene. I really support the idea that most of the press offenses should be decriminalized. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are so many reasons to support this. Mm-hmm. It is not only going to help the media become more vibrant, as you suggested, but it is also helping the judiciary, because I do believe that these cases, once brought to the courts of law, they do consume a lot of time, both to the plaintiffs and the defendants. Of course, they do take a lot of resources to handle them from the court's point of view. And the whole point is that since the media reforms of 2013, we've established institutions that could handle most of these issues in a more helpful way. I would give an example. Since the creation of Rwanda Media Commission in 2013, over 130 cases have been handled. And none of these cases or complaints ever ended in the courts of law. And they were amicably settled. Among those complaints, we have over 23, which are related to defamation. The rest have to do with issues of access to information, issues to do with copyright, all these issues that are within the media. So to me, decriminalizing would not only help the media, but it would also help the judiciary as well. But much more, my point of view is that it would also help in a diplomatic kind of, the nation's diplomatic looking at it from that perspective.
Save the image of the country,
save the image of the
diplomatically.
country
This is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
In the first round, let me just bring in also Ivan here, practicing journalist. Your arguments or your thoughts on this particular issue. He says it will help reduce the backlog in courts. But the argument is that if we decriminalize it and make it, you know, a civil offense where we can meet outside court and settle this thing, or go talk to the regulators and settle this thing, then it would make it sort of an easy way for journalists or anybody in the media who might be out to defame someone. That has been the argument for those who are proponents or those who support the fact that these offenses remain criminal offenses.
I agree with Magician, but I partly disagree with that analogy, because first of all, the reason why the Rwanda Media Commission was set up is, as Mugisha said, is handling a couple of cases, very, very many cases that would have ended up in court and causing that backlog. But when a journalist knows that there is no punitive, it's not in the criminal, it's not criminal to write something or to search something that's going to, that might bring to light something that's going to eventually lead them to some kind of lawsuit, it gives them hope and courage to carry on their profession much better, rather than just fearing that if I pursue this story, I'm going to end up in a court and probably be in prison for 5 years and stuff. So I think it's not rather it's not a bad thing to get the defamation out of the penal code. And in the words of the Legal Reform Commission, they say that the penal code is pretty a very, very big document, and some of these things are supposed to get out and be given to the institutions that's supposed to be taking care of them. And looking at journalists right now, the biggest problem is fearing or self-censoring yourself to carry out very deep investigations into cases like corruption of the so-called big fish, or cases of mismanagement of very, very important projects that could have changed the lives of people. So I agree that the defamation, although in the penal code actually it doesn't talk about journalists, it says defamation on the general, anyone caught defaming. Yeah. But for journalists, there are a couple of press-related offenses that they are all sectioned under 701 and up to 705, I guess. True. Those are the ones that should be taken out and given to the institution that's supposed to be
regulatory institution.
The regulatory institution.
Yeah. Let's bring in the learned friends here. Let's start with Benjamin before we come in with Bosco. You've been listening to the arguments, sort of not even arguments, agreements on this particular issue. Do you find them genuine? You know, from a legal perspective, if you were going to represent someone who has been defamed and they were raising these arguments or saying that, you know, we would feel more comfortable to work, for example, for the press openly and easily if we know that we are not going to find ourselves in a lawsuit. Would you take that as anything that holds water?
Thank you, my brother Jean. I don't think I subscribe to their school of thought on a different, on a ground that is solid and concrete. Maybe first and foremost, let's come to understand what defamation is. Yes. As a definition or a terminology of it. And I would like to maybe my colleagues to refer themselves to the glossary of legal terminologies that was issued by the Ministry of Justice of Rwanda of June 2011, where among others it defined defamation as a publication of a statement against a person, whether in public or not, that would demean, belittle, or reduce such a person's honor or dignity in society or by any person. So when the media comes in and says we should be let free on a ground of investigative journalism, even investigative journalism has it, professionally an investigative journalist should double check. has the information I've gotten may be concrete. If this party says this, then what is the story of the other party to bring out what is concrete?
So you feel the removal of this offense from the penal code would make it like a free ride for journalists who do not want to counter-check? Is this what your argument is?
And that was the rationale
as to why it was put there?
Yes.
Yeah. Bosco, do you subscribe to his school of thought in his own words?
Of course, not exactly.
Mm-hmm.
As you say, first of all, the glossary, if he quoted it well,
yeah,
it does not define defamation well. It misses one point about that's labor. What about slander? What about communication? Because things have changed. We know that the oldest form of communication was print media. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have people have rioted with several innovations. Someone can tweet something bad and it will affect
the character of the other
person.
Yes.
That's on the issue of...
So first, you do not agree with him on the definition part.
It's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing with him.
Yes.
Probably the glossary. Maybe I'm disagreeing with the glossary published by the ministry. But I think it's the definitions can be found. The whole debate is very healthy.
Yes.
And I like it. And I like Mugisha's point of view. There are two Mugishas, Emmanuel and
Ivan.
I like the whole point about decriminalizing. Even if you went to the internet, the whole world is discussing decriminalizing defamation. And everybody have their own point. The United Nations has taken a position. That was in the General Assembly of 2002. The European Community under the Organization on Security, Cooperation and something, OSCE, they took a position in 2000 about defamation, decriminalizing defamation. But they put a few things into context. They very well knew that there are countries that are not yet ready
to decriminalize.
Are we one of them?
What do you think?
My reasoning would be, there's a reason why these things are, why we criminalize defamation. First of all, the history of journalism in Rwanda, if I may be quoted well, is not very healthy. Journalists had a bad reputation in their way of disseminating information, and probably that's the philosophy behind criminalizing it. Mine is a hybrid.
Yes.
Mine is a hybrid of arguments.
Yes.
Because other debates will follow.
Yes.
Other experts or the Law Reform Commission or the Media Council will give their ideas. First of all, the freedom of speech for everybody, the journalists, freedom of expression is guaranteed under the Constitution. That means we're all good. But of course there's an undernote. It must be in respect of public morals and must be in good faith.
But so the argument can also be, and probably maybe Mugisha, as you come in, when you say that the underlying reasons as to why it was criminalized, and you touched on the history of the media in this country, and probably journalists of today would argue and say, is that history, is that what...
Should we be tied to the history?
Yes, should we be tied
until
to the
today?
History? Until today. And probably Mugisha, could you jump in on that one?
If let's just look at the chronology of Rwanda's development since the 1994 genocide. Definitely, we all know journalists had a terrible reputation. They're calling people to kill other people. This is insane all over the world. You just don't call people to kill using media to incite people to kill. The government has done a lot to make sure that journalists are free to express themselves or to write very, very quality information. I don't know why the government should stop halfway. They have created the bill on access to information.
Yes.
They have created the RMC, Rwanda Media Commission, and we also have Rwanda Journalists Association. All these are working together. There is RGB, which awards journalists once in a while. So there is all those developments. And now the remaining thing, personally, what I think is how do you let a journalist completely be free and know that they can actually write a full investigative story and no repercussion will come on them punitively?
Would you have an answer to that particular question?
I think so.
Yes. What
and that's just simple. Remove all press-related offenses from the penal code. Give it to Mr. Mugisha's organization and let them have the liberty to issue out the punishments. And if a journalist is caught slandering someone's name without any basis or giving fake facts or something like that, they can be taken there and then they can argue the case out, and then punishments can be given. It's not that taking it out of the penal code is giving us leeway to do whatever we want. It's just that they're giving us, we're getting a better way of expressing ourselves, well knowing that we're not going to be, that the huge burden of knowing that you're going to be taken to court.
I object to that.
He objects.
On a ground that my brother Mugisha,
Yes.
Mugisha
Yeah.
has not looked at a few things that maybe are involved in this situation.
Like what?
He's looking at a person who is defamed, but has not looked also at the consequences that follow even to the third party. So you can imagine a person with a reputation and maybe leading a certain position, a certain organization, maybe in the country, being defamed, what would follow to his kids at school, to his family, to maybe those who associate with him. So if it is to be maintained as a crime, it would not hamper the working relationship of the investigative journalists, but instead it would keep the journalists on toes of cross-checking. Is the information we have the right information? What is the position of either party?
So you insist we need to keep it there as in the penal code.
Yeah.
Eugene, I think something very important that we should look at to guide us is the Constitution. You know the recent Constitution under Article 38. The first paragraph states clearly that freedom of the press, freedom of expression, and of access to information shall be guaranteed by the state. But of course, given to the fact that these are not absolute freedoms or rights, they have to have, they must put exceptions. Issues to do with privacy of one's family or reputation, issues to do with public morals, etc., should be protected in a certain way. And they refer to a media law to come in place to look at that. They don't even refer to the penal code. It is the media law that should provide for conditions under which those limitations or conditions should be granted.
And Mugisha says the government is seemingly leaving the work halfway. Do you feel that we are now ready to now take the full, running of these things in terms of managing those who commit these offenses?
Yes.
Should the public be safe and say that we have a regulative body that would equally punish journalists that violate this particular law today that is in the penal code if it was to be removed?
Yes, we do have systems like when we talk of the Rwanda Media Commission as a mechanism which was established to handle complaints that do with defamation and other media related complaints. This is what the government was doing to ensure that the constitutional provision is guaranteed as the Constitution desires it.
Yes.
That is the spirit. So the whole point should be, how should we empower these systems and mechanisms so that they can work perfectly and limit the wrong journalists? Because by having that, it's because we want to limit the wrong journalist by not overstepping the bounds. But the whole point is a good journalist should serve professionally, should have facts well verified. And by the way, there is a code of ethics that the Media Commission administers. And when you look at the Code of Ethics, it has all these elements that should protect the public trust with the media. So by administering the code of ethics, we tend to see that journalists are being helped to streamline their profession. As I said, when they go to the courts of law, we even lose that opportunity of even showing them their mistakes. Because this profession is much vulnerable to, you know, to defamation, kind of prosecution and slander and libel, you know, those kinds of offenses. It is very much vulnerable. But from my experience, I can see that whenever we handle these cases, it is even a process of teaching them how they're supposed to be conducted, and even the public gets to learn. So it kind of becomes like an arbitrary process whereby people end up being satisfied and they never repeat the same mistakes again. Unlike going to the case.
I see Bosco is fidgeting here. He's sort of not agreeing with with the point.
Actually,
do you agree with everything that he says?
Ironically, I agree. I agree.
But
I
what's
agree
the
with
problem?
both of them.
Yes, yes.
I agree with both of them. They should enjoy. Actually, they should practice in a very free environment. And as we said before, the Constitution guarantees it. And there's an underscore under Article 38, paragraph 2, I think, that says it should be they should practice with public order in mind. That means that freedom that is guaranteed by the state is not absolute. You're not going to incite people to commit genocide, to be racist, to sexually harass people. So there are restrictions. By the way, there are restrictions that the state is absolutely allowed to do.
But Benjamin's argument was that the journalists and those who are working closely with the journalists seem to be thinking just of their interests. And we are sort of forgetting what happens after this defamation has happened to that particular third party, and I mean that person and the third party.
I think that's not the question. The question would be, we have criminal defamation, and we have civil defamation.
And
which one is the best? Now, the journalists are saying that we can manage it. The criminal courts are ready to continue with their 3 very nice articles. That's Article 217, 288, and 317 of the Penal Code. Quite heavy. Anybody who faces imprisonment would be panicking. He said it. Whenever I get my laptop and I want to put down an article, I'll think about the reaction. I'm going to talk about corruption in the public service in a particular Umurenje or district. I need to mention names because I think in the media law you have to state the sources, and if you're put to task, there's Article 9, which even allows us who are not journalists to disseminate information in the 2013 law. So the issue is reasonable restriction. Is the criminal defamation under the Penal Code giving us reasonable, is it reasonably restricting people or unreasonably restricting people? Are there appropriate less restrictive measures that we can go? And I think yes, that means civil defamation can, to argue on there, but we cannot allow them. The Media Council, I would call it a mediation authority. They can't punish people. There are other institutions of government, the judicial authority.
In fact, we do sanction according to the Code of Ethics. Some of the sanctions that
the Code of Ethics is not a law.
It's not a law.
It's not binding. It just keeps you in check.
But they've given it this power to sanction, like when there is recidivism of these acts of violating the ethics. The General Assembly can sanction a media organ by withdrawing its license to operate. So that's a sanction, because the whole point is we want to build the profession so that it gains public trust. By the way, the Rwanda Media Commission, most people tend to misinterpret it. It is there to serve a public interest more than it is serving a journalist cause, because it protects the public from the unethical performance of the media. That is the bottom line. So whatever we do, we ensure that the public is protected from what the media is providing them with.
Yeah.
So we monitor.
So what you're
and
saying,
even
you're
sanction.
ready, if it was to be removed, you're ready to handle, and no one should be worried that now we are in trouble. What had been holding back journalists from defaming us is now not there anymore, and it's now been given to you know, a regulatory body that probably they feel is not ready. You feel you're ready to handle all
I
this?
believe so.
Super. So we're taking a very short break. Just hold that particular thought. When we come back, we move the conversation forward and ask ourselves what would be the alternatives and how best can we, you know, make good use of those alternatives. Keep tweeting. Talk to us at Debate411. That's the Twitter handle. I have Dolapo, who's on Twitter and says, when journalists expose wrongdoers via their reports, that isn't defamation, except, of course, the reports are false. That is what he feels. And you too can be able to participate on the program. Do you really feel that if, you know, press-related offenses were removed from the penal code and handled by, you know, civil courts, would that make journalists be more proactive? Because the argument is that they feel scared that if I was to go and expose a certain leader, I might be able to find myself in trouble because I would be sued for defamation and I find myself in jail or paying heavy fines. So talk to us, share your thoughts on this issue, and we'll definitely sample them in the course of the program. Stay with us, we're taking a very short break. Don't go away. So Natasha, are we cornering our teachers? Are we being unfair to them? At the end of the day, Fiona also mentions that the more you show them this condom, the more you're opening up their minds to having sex. But do you feel well represented? Do you think the media issues are well taken to the table when it comes to advocacy? How do we convince them and say that we shut it down because you exceeded the limits? The word conservation looks just complicated, but how do we simplify this? What role do our schools play then? And the people around our children, what role can they play in order to avoid these children becoming a menace in the society? Yes. Caroline, you just want to sound moral, but you're just not accepting the reality on the ground.
Well, I want to sound moral and encourage it and practice it.
This is an EA production.
And welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us. And of course, the show is Debate 411. We're here talking about the question on whether to decriminalize defamation or not, and whether if that happens, would that help in developing a vibrant media? That is the point of focus tonight on the program. With me is lawyer Benjamin, journalist Ivan, and of course lawyer Bosco and Mugisha from the Rwanda Media Commission. Now, before we went for the break, we were all, talking about the whole situation as it is today and our wishes and our thoughts on those particular issues. But I want to come back on the point that Benjamin brought earlier on the fate of the person affected by this defamation case, and what the people out there should feel, when it comes to their right of privacy and right to having their image protected, as it is today, when they feel like, when it is in the penal code, then we are feeling more safe and all that. So how can you convince the people out there, those who probably are scared of being in this situation, and how can you argue and say that you are not just talking for your interests, but also promising that in the interest of the people out there that might fall prey or victims to this, they should not have any worry, because we will practice good journalism after this happens, the removal?
First of all, decriminalizing defamation does not mean that defamation won't happen. Mm-hmm. Whether it's within the penal code or not in the penal code, it's going to happen once in a while. It's not like going to be a foolproof time when there is no defamation in the penal code. But what journalists want, journalists like me want, is that we are not under the cloud of being sent to prison for writing something that we thought was factual, and even if we were wrong, it can take it to prison. The fact is, the penal code gives ways of how to overcome that. It says if you're found guilty of defaming someone, you have to write an erratum, or you can pay a fine or something like that. All those things are within the penal code, and what we're saying is, all these things of protecting a victim can all be given to the Rwanda Media Commission. And then a media house that defamed someone, or a person who defamed, a journalist that defamed, can always get it out, can always write an erratum, or be asked to maybe give up journalism for, I don't know. He knows the punitive measures much better. But the thing is, going away a bit from defamation, I don't think it is the biggest worry in the penal code. As we've said before, there is a couple of articles, and there is one that's Article 704, if I remember well. It's it says, if I'm to just paraphrase it, committing a media offense with the intent of destabilizing national security or something like that. So you find that you write an article and you don't know whether someone's going to charge you for trying to undermine national security or undermine someone's image. How do you get to draw a balance? How do you get to write an article without fear or favor, right? That's actually it's actually more in favor of national security probably. But because someone thinks it's not in national security's favor, they're going to charge you for something that you find that your career is gone, all your aspirations are gone just because you wrote an article. That's what I'm saying. If it's wrong, let the right institution come and handle it, not a judge in court and trying to give out a 5-year sentence to a journalist who wrote something that.
I object to that.
Go ahead, just go ahead.
On the ground that what journalists should understand is that defamation per se is not designed for only journalists.
I agree.
And they should know that apart from specifying where journalists should be handled, also other articles talk about defamation. You look at Article 276, 288, 289, among others, also provide for when or what may happen when someone defames a person, whether in public or in private. So it should not be a way of saying that the penal code, or maybe the minds of the legislators, was to be against journalism per se, but rather to protect also the image. I hope journalism and the practitioners of journalism in Rwanda know the history of this country.
And
Yes.
I understand how Benjamin is reasoning, but if I were to object from, the reasoning is advancing, I would also say that criminalizing defamation in itself is not worth it. Because what do you mean by criminalizing? It means that a person who is suspected of that kind of act is a criminal, which is not the case for sure, because it is not worth it. It is not proportionate in most cases with the punishment that follows. We would rather have it
on that
be considered as a civil issue, because it is even very hard to measure the intent. And with criminal law, you have 3 elements. One of them is the mens rea, the intention to commit that crime. It is very hard to measure the intention that a person intended to defame.
To defame you.
It is very hard. So that's why, from the academic point of view, we should also argue for these acts to be considered civil. People should be liable under the civil law and not liable under the criminal law. And when it comes to journalists, they are even more liable under the code of ethics. So we can handle them through the code of ethics and even under the civil law. Because even the very aspect of measuring the intent of this crime is not that possible. Second, it is harsh against media freedoms. Third, the punishment for that is not worth it.
It's not worth it. Bosco, you'll come in, but he wanted to object. He wanted to substantiate his point.
Yes, he was talking of anyone suspected for defamation.
Intent.
Or with an intent to defame. A suspect is not a criminal for your information. And what you should, and the media should understand, is that whereas it is maybe needed that it should be in the civil situation, but you have to put it also into account what results from a false statement ushered into the public. Of course, it may come later that it is now cleared that, or maybe on media and somewhere else, that it has been false and misguidance and whatnot. But in the public, it makes a greater danger and an impact, even on the family, even on the people you transact.
Yeah, but there's a viewer here who says, that's Pascal, and says defamation should be decriminalized and rather strengthen Media Commission to do its job.
Instead, what the Media Commission should do, of which I think they should put much more emphasis, is sensitization of the people in the journalist field of what is taking place. What happens when you do so and so? What happens when you do A, B, C, D?
So
that
you're
they
saying
work
it's better
knowing
to inform them earlier so that they do not even get themselves in that particular
I think,
problem.
Benjamin, one important thing that Benjamin should understand, we are not advocating for anything to do with opening up for journalists to, to have a free ticket or a license to defame. Good journalism is not about defaming, or even a public member who is responsible should, of course, exercise his constitutional right in a responsible manner. So we are not saying that by supporting decriminalizing defamation, we are promoting, the very act of journalism, exposing themselves through defaming. Of course, what he suggests is that we should put efforts in empowering our media and enlightening our public to be responsible in their communication, which is very correct. But again, I want to challenge Mr. Benjamin. In the world we are living in today, ICT, information technology, and the internet is even making things worse. Just look at social media, what you just mentioned. A person just makes a tweet or creates like an animation about somebody defaming. He does it from Kenya or from Zimbabwe, where even our criminal, our prosecution officers have no jurisdiction over them. How will you implement that crime? How will you manage? So some of these crimes are even becoming obsolete.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit.
Because of the situation
I think again, Mr. Benjamin, I'm sorry. I think you're
it's okay.
you're having a lot of people opposing what you're saying here. But what I want to say is speaking as a journalist. I think there are 2 lawyers and 3 lawyers actually. I'd like to speak from a point of a journalist's experience. When you speak to very many journalists, especially those outside of Kigali, and they're probably trying to investigate some wrongdoing in a hospital. You find. I'm just giving an example. It doesn't have to. It's just from out of the blue. You find that the moment a journalist goes to an institution and there is actually something wrong going on, immediately the police is notified, and then the journalist suddenly loses his camera or his notebook or something, and he's threatened to drop the story. What I'm saying is, it's more that the people in the public institutions are supposed to be sensitized and told about the work of journalists.
So it's not the journalists that need to be sensitized.
Of course, we do. We
like
do have to be sensitized.
The more of the job has to be on to the public.
The more of the job has to be on public institutions. Very many people right now understand the role of journalists. You call people who would not pick your call in 2010. Right now, they're so easy. They pick your call. They give you all the statistics you need and stuff like that. But when you go a little bit deeper into local government areas and hospitals, countrywide, you find that journalists are like the enemy. So you wonder what's going on, and that's partly because they know that once a journalist carries out a story, even if it's factual, as long as they can prove that your intent was not to inform, but to boast or to defame, They can
Just before
put you in trouble.
Let's bring back Bosco here, because Benjamin's
I don't know.
arguments and all this, if you can digest that for us and share with us your
If
thoughts.
I may digest for you, I think the debate probably is restrictive. Let's talk about defamation. Let us put the journalists a little bit.
Yes.
Just for 1 second, put them aside. Yes. Because after all, if defamation affects all of us, and if we are decriminalizing defamation, that means we are looking for alternative measures.
Yes, to solve.
So just that rests a little bit Mujisha's media council. It should not be so eager to capture the things, because for us, we are personally, I would want to have a field day in court, in a civil court, because the prosecutors wouldn't give us enough time to really enjoy their suits. So civil defamation is better than criminal defamation, in my point of view. Why? It's because in my thoughts, I've put the reasonable restriction embedded in the criminal code to be a little bit harsher, because it involves a prison sentence, be it suspensive or not. The mere fact of thinking of imprisonment, that means a restriction of your liberty, which is embedded in the Constitution. It's a fundamental right. Is quite a scaring factor to any be it a journalist or anybody who would be. So therefore, I would advocate for civil defamation sanctions, which is a proportionate damage, and probably some remedies. Have these guys write some apologies, many apologies in all, in several stations, something like that, plus damages, suspensions, and so in a civil court. Give the lawyers a good day in court to put the record straight for the victim of defamation. Therefore, I think we have dignity and freedom of expression at the weighing scale.
Yeah. But the argument of Benjamin is that the apologies might not be enough to mend my spoiled reputation.
What about the financial compensation? Financial compensation could be chilling enough to the victim of defamation. A criminal law lawyer, not a criminal lawyer, there are no criminal lawyers, a criminal law lawyer would argue that there's, when you take him to prison for 2 years or for 1 year or for 6 months, that is my moral compensation. But moral compensation against an imprisonment, when you put them again on the weighing scale, is a little bit harsher. And before I forget, he brought in an issue of state security, and they call that absolute privileges. Every state must have an absolute privilege. Yes. We also have minor privileges, like private privileges, like parents telling you don't go to the neighbor's kid, is quite a bad kid. That's defamation, but it has a privilege. The parents telling the daughter, don't go over there, there's a little boy there who's a little bit stubborn. And therefore, Mugisha here is putting up a corporate veil to the media council to handle their issues. What about us? What about us? Benjamin, you may forgive me, what if he defames me? Do I go to media council? So let us go to the civil court. Let us have a field day in court. Let us have damages slapped onto him, millions of francs. Let us have these radios and stations go bankrupt out of carelessness.
I wish to object to that.
You want to object to that? But before you object, we just want to set the record straight. He's from the Rwanda Media Commission, not Rwanda Media Council. Just setting the record straight for the record purposes. Yes.
Okay. I want to object to Council Bosco's argument on the ground that he's advancing a notion of going to the civil courts other than the criminal courts on the ground that we would have like a field off in court, in civil court, and it would look nice more than the criminal court. He's not putting.
That's not the only argument I made.
He's not putting into account. He's not putting into account that the penal code not only provides for criminal sanctions like going in jail and whatnot, also provides for damages as in terms of money. 276.
To whose account?
276.
Those are not damages.
27.
Yes,
To whose
they
account?
they are what?
Those are fines.
288.
Yes.
They are criminal penalties.
Yes.
They are not
But
civil damages.
Why would you think
What
that
I'm trying to advance here,
imprisonment is the
what
best
I'm
option?
what I'm trying to, you're asking that as to why imprisonment would be the best option.
Yeah, better
Yes.
than a civil
It
case.
would be like a scarecrow.
Exactly,
and
that's our point.
It would be like a scarecrow
And it's
to the
unconstitutional.
potential.
It's
No,
unconstitutional.
no.
It is
To the
very
potential,
unconstitutional.
defamers of the various people. And on a
Just to help us in the debate, defamation is the only crime. It's the only crime that has the victim, coming to a criminal court to put records straight.
That I'm not what they
Yes,
said.
in other crimes, the victim gives a testimony and so forth. So that means that defamation in nature is a tort. It must go civil.
And what he
Yes,
says,
but
what he says that it's a scarecrow to scare away potential defamers. This is in his own words. But Mugisha here, this Mugisha, the journalist, says that that's the point. It is scaring us, the journalists, from doing our
where he's
job.
getting it
That's why I
wrong.
say that it's unconstitutional.
Yes,
No, it
yes.
is scaring them. It's very
No, where he's
Must be
getting it,
restricted.
where he's getting it wrong,
Yes.
wrong from, is on the ground that defamation by its nature,
Yeah.
it dances on fault lines of a lie. And I don't know whether the situation it has happened maybe or has come to your offices. I have not heard myself of someone who has been criminally
Yes.
liable of a fact, and it is well set on ground and it is verified.
But let me ask Benjamin, how do you measure the intent as a lawyer of criminal defamation?
Yes,
how would you bring about your arguments when you're before a criminal judge? How do you measure the intent to defame?
Yeah.
So that you get your case.
the intent of defamation or to defame, first and foremost, it has to be on the lines of lies. To show that actually this was not right.
Let me help on that answer. See, the whole defamation case, the whole defamation defense is that what I spoke was true. And the other one will say, no, he maliciously put something to light which was wrong, which is false. And therefore, there are two schools of thought. For you to determine whether something is true or wrong in a criminal court is quite difficult, because we go with the principle of reasonableness.
Yeah. Yes.
Deliberate care and deliberation is put to test. You're sticking that what I said is true.
Yes.
And the other one is saying, no, what you're saying was malicious, false, and so forth.
Aimed at tainting my image.
I think that is very
And therefore, when you start punishing someone with an imprisonment, when the whole argument in court is all about it was malicious, it was unreasonable, there was negligence on his part, and so forth, it does not go well in the principles of crime.
Right.
But in a civil court, someone can win a case against you just because you said no. Just because you demonstrated a degree of reasonableness to try to put out the truth, not the whole truth.
Right. So in closing, as we close, for you, we go civil.
We go civil. We don't go to the media
Commission.
That cannot work.
Right.
We go civil. Not because I like going civil, it's because I take them to heart. They're scared guys.
We go civil very quickly as we go.
My point is, as journalists, not as public members, as journalists, we have ethical and civil mechanisms. Criminal out of the picture.
Yeah.
So we have ethical liability and civil liability in case of defamation, and this should be tort defamation and not criminal defamation.
But why is it after all the campaigns or after all this information, you still haven't been able to win this?
Well, I remember when they were first reviewing the penal code some time back, we advocated this to the commission in parliament that was, doing the reforms, and they told us that the fact that we are still seeing these cases coming up, in fact, by that time they reduced the penalty from 1 year to 6 months, and that was out of advocacy. But the promise was, once you prove that you as media, you can now serve professionally.
Then it shall. So you feel this time around you have a bigger chance?
The very fact that we don't have these cases in the courts of law since 2013 is an indication. Yeah, it's a good sign that we no longer need.
Or they are scared.
Yeah, we no longer need.
As we close, good sign, or we are scared. That's why we're not having these cases.
We're not per se scared. But I agree with Mugisha. The criminal liability for a journalist because he wrote an article or because he said something on radio, it's very hard to prove intent. And okay, you can prove the fact that he said so-and-so is a thief, but then there are facts to show that he's not a thief. I agree that I highly recommend government to get all the media-related offenses. As right now they're trying to amend the penal code. I think it's the right time. Otherwise, in the next 2 years, they're going to be trying to do the same thing when they get the point.
It's high time, you say. Right, Benjamin, in 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much. I think to keep on toes our people, to protect all interests of different people that our society has, whether strong or weak, it should remain a crime so that our records are set straight wherever we are.
Wherever we are. So it remains a crime. Right. So the arguments and the debate has to continue, and of course, as Mugisha continues to, put their case on the table to those who are supposed to pull the strings or work out this thing, we will keep talking so that we are able to get all the different views represented on this particular issue. Thank you so much, Bosco. Thank you so much, Mugisha. Mugisha Squared. Thank you so much for coming. Benjamin, asante sana for your time. And for all those who have been tweeting, thank you so much for being a part of the program. Richard Gasana, thank you for your comment and your view that why not organize a debate with some mayors, any topic that lies in the field. Thanks. Definitely that one will be considered and definitely will inform you in good time. From me, right here in studio, thank you for watching and thank you for always supporting Debate 4-in-1. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye.